welcome to another BruhVision.
Welcome to another episode of BruhVision. I gotta think of a good intro song there.
A good intro. You guys hit us up. This week we are doing the 2025 Thunderbolts movie, the latest in Marvel cinema, I guess you could say.
Yes, this is the latest in the Marvel cinematic universe. It is the last movie of Phase 5 of the multiverse saga. There's a lot to
There's a lot going on. This stars Florence Pugh, Sebastian Stan, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Lewis Pullman, David Harbour, Wyatt Russell, and Hannah John Kamen. Tony, what do you think? Like, do we start with just like where we're at with Marvel at this point in time? Like, where were you at going into this movie?
Well, here's the thing I told myself was that I wasn't going to do homework for any more Marvel movies. That
You know what?
I'm not going to rewatch a bunch of shit. Like, I'm going to walk in with what I remember. And if it took you 9 years to continue up on something, then that's on you to explain that to your audience, Marvel. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Honestly, yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I watched this movie and I was very much like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna go in. It'll be what it'll be. I don't have much expectations for Marvel anymore. I think like this whole Phase 5 has been a journey. There have been some highs, there have been some lows. There have been a lot of internet back and forth. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I was like, I'm excited to see it. I'm enjoying the movies. I'm willing to, like if you can put together a beginning, middle, and end for me, I'll go check out your movie. And that's how I went into this.
You know, I do have some other things to say in terms about the state of the MCU, but I want to just like any just spoiler-free thoughts before we just jump into the details.
Oh, okay. Honestly, this is going to be spoiler free, but I'm still going to give my reaction. Which,
Okay.
spoiler free, I will say that I found this movie okay. It was a okay movie. Like I watched it and I was like, you're a movie. Like again, beginning, middle, end. I thought that it was more grounded in its characters. I thought that it was they did a lot more practical effects, and without giving anything away, I was like, I understand why you're doing this. I understand the purpose of this story and what you're trying to respond to in the public zeitgeist. So I watched it just being like, okay, you're a movie. Cool. That's my reaction. You.
My also spoiler-free reaction to this movie was it was okay. I literally wrote that same thing. I was like, it was okay. I think I've seen some internet reviews already kind of really hyping this up as like a return to form for Marvel, and I just like didn't feel that. Like I thought it was good. I liked it more than Captain America, the Falcon movie that just came out. I liked aspects of it more than the Deadpool movie that came out. So I was like, there's things like I like, but I still didn't feel like I would ever rewatch this movie if like if I needed to remind myself of what was going on in the MCU for like an Avengers movie, I wouldn't rewatch this. I would watch like a 2-minute YouTube video summary of it. So that's how I feel.
It's so funny you say that. I was in the theater watching it, and I was like, I don't know if I'll ever rewatch this movie. I was like, I don't know if I will. I understand what you're doing. At a certain point in time, I was like, I'm having fun. But to me, it's not fair to compare it to Sinners. But I was like, I just watched Sinners.
Yes.
And I watched it twice in 1 week. And so to have the cinematic experience that was Sinners, or even like the very fun kind of carefree movie that was Drop, which came out earlier this month, like to go on both of those rides in the same month and then watch this movie, I was like, you're Marvel, you're giving me Marvel formula, I'm getting Marvel dialogue, and ultimately I don't think that this is a bad movie, but I've had a more fun time in the theaters recently.
I also wrote the same thing, that I'm still riding the high of Sinners, and while it's not fair to compare a movie from Marvel to Sinners, because it's not trying to be that kind of movie, the being in like an audience that's so engaged and like actually on a ride, like it felt like I had a home cooked meal after eating a lot of junk food. And while Marvel may have put out like the best of the junk food, because I just ate mom's home cooking, it's hard to like really maybe give it the flowers I would have if I saw it prior to Sinners. I don't know.
No, to your point, I think it's perfectly said. I think like it's the difference between like a home cooked, really good meal and like a Whopper. It's like the Whopper is famous for a reason. It's a good burger.
Yeah.
But like, it's like, have you had like fresh cheese? Have you had like really good meat, like homemade brioche buns? Like you have that, and you go to Whopper, you're like, yo, this is good. I'm not gonna deny it.
To your point that you made, it's it does a lot of work to interconnect storylines that I know probably need to happen in order for the next Marvel thing to happen. It does a pretty decent job of pulling together characters that I thought Marvel was largely just gonna abandon, like they've done with a handful of others, Shang-Chi, whatever. And I like a redemption arc. Like I like anti-heroes, I like underdog stories, and I thought if anything, it was a great movie about building a team. Not on the par of like Guardians, but I liked it better than Age of Ultron in terms of just like a team that I'm rooting for throughout the film.
And also to that again, no spoilers. Florence Pugh does a great job.
Yeah,
she kind of opens and closes the movie. She is our anchor character to like really drive us through, and you understand what she's going through. You understand where her character's at, even if you don't know anything else. They really do root you in this character's journey and where they are and what their personality is. And you get a true story arc with this character, and I thought it was really fun. Also, to that point, Julia Louis Dreyfus, another one where it's like, honestly, in less capable hands, this would have been hammy. It wouldn't have worked. But you were able to give me a performance where I was like, yeah, you know what? Sure.
You know what? I have a slight criticism of her character, not her specifically. And again, no spoilers, but there was moments of this movie where I felt like, oh, they're really trying to do their version of a Veep episode with her specifically. And in a way that I was like, I almost wish they would have challenged her to kind of step out of the box versus kind of rehashing a version of a character she's synonymous with already. But nonetheless, she delivers what she's hired to do.
My whole thing is like that final scene with her where it's like she's pretending to be in trouble and then like, you know, it turns. I was like, see, that is a genius use of this character.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really a fun way to do it. Also, I'm going to say David Harbour, fun, hilarious, a little too much for me. I think they used him a little too much, in my opinion.
Here's my issue with David Harbour is that I feel like Marvel does this a lot where they put in a character for the purposes of humor who isn't really that funny. Like, it's just like the way they say things is funny. Like, I kind of get that vibe from Ryan Reynolds sometimes too, but yeah. I just feel like they are really good at hiring funny people, but for whatever reason, they don't like have maybe the writing to support like that kind of goes on par with the comedy. Because the thing is that, you know, we talk about all the time is like mid-budget comedies are mostly failing because of these tentpole films. No one wants to invest in them. And instead, a lot of these larger action movies get intertwined with comedic elements to check that box as a comedy. But I just don't feel like Marvel does it very successfully.
What I really felt in this movie was Marvel doesn't know how to hold a sentimental moment. It will always undercut any kind of emotion. And that was constantly, it's like you would get this really serious moment and it wouldn't let you sit there. It would always insert a joke, usually with the David Harbour character. And it's like, again, it's not that it's bad. It's just, it doesn't allow there to be any real stakes because any emotion that you feel is going to be undermined very shortly.
And to that point, I kind of felt like the emotional message that they were trying to push throughout the film, and you know, I don't think it's spoilers to say that there's a large mental health message throughout the film. I don't know that they kind of are super successful in that either. At times it feels like heavy-handed and like corny, and other times it feels like they should be diving deeper but keeping it very surface level in a very safe Disney approved way. And it just doesn't feel like I'm getting the emotional resonance I want from a film that's about this. Like if you're going to do like Inside Out versus beats Avengers. Like, really give it to me. Don't half-ass it, which I felt like the movie
That's a
could have.
very great way, and I love that. Like again, if you haven't seen the movie and you don't know what we're talking about, that's both very accurate, but also like such a weird like spoiler, no spoiler, like to like put together. Okay, I only want to say one more thing before we go into spoiler territory, which is to say that to me, I understood the audience that this was for. And
Yes.
I often remind myself in a movie like this where I can be a little critical that it's not necessarily trying to target me. It's trying to keep a younger audience. It's trying to engage with a younger audience. So sometimes the messaging is going to be directly towards people who don't have my life experience, who are
Yes.
still trying to figure it out, who are still trying to learn how to deal with their emotions or the weight of feeling both powerful and helpless at the exact same time. Like those things are great and I love that they're doing it. However, some of it I think comes off childish because it is in fact trying to target children.
That's very fair. That's very fair criticism.
Okay, are you ready to move into a spoiler?
Please, yes.
Okay, now it's time for our spoiler conversation. Again, if you have not seen this movie and you do not want to be spoiled, why are you still here? I already told you.
Go away.
So let's talk about this movie. I watched this movie and I was like, this is our soapbox. This is what we do. So you should not be surprised. I watched this and I was like, oh, this, even though it stars Yelena, it is for white men. This is
100%.
great white men and very much like, hey, do you feel lonely? Do you feel like no one cares? Well, don't worry. Friends are here. And it's like one big Barney episode for straight dudes to be like, hey, have you tried friendship?
Yeah. It felt like Disney learned that there was a male loneliness epidemic, and they were like, "How can we infuse this into a film?" It's interesting because I just got done watching like the Adolescence series on Netflix, which approaches this from a different angle.
Yeah.
But to kind of like see it this way again, not that there's anything wrong with movies centered around mental health, but like they don't explore either his mental health issues nor do they explore the exploitation of his mental health enough to justify the resolution.
We are talking about Lewis Pullman's character, Robert Reynolds, who is also known as the Sentry,
Yes.
who is also known as the Void.
Yes.
And so that's four names, if you could track it. And here's the thing, I thought his performance was better as Bob and as the Void than it was as Rob, the Sentry. But um they built up a formidable villain. I was very much like, how are we going to get out of this? A huge part of me was like, oh, this feels very almost elementary in its storytelling.
Yeah.
And the idea that like the power is inside of you and we just need to battle those demons. It's very Turning Red. Only Turning Red did it better.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. There's so many things that this movie's trying to do that other movies have recently done so much better that it's hard to kind of give them full credit, especially when Disney's behind a lot of the other movies that do this better. Like for example, here's what I'll say. While mental health is an important issue, I think that we could have explored the mental health of our core team members as checking that box without assigning it also to the main villain. Because the problem is that I feel like Marvel doesn't really have a lot of great villains anymore. And part of that is because this movie specifically is asking us to empathize with the villain, not the villain's mythology. Which, if you go back to some of the better MCU villains, think Thanos or Killmonger, you're struggling as an audience member because you can see their perspective, you can see their point of view, and part of you agrees with it. So that's what makes it a more formidable villain, I feel, than someone that you're just like, well, he had it hard, so we should feel bad for him. Let's just give him a group hug, and then all the damage he did can go away. I don't know that that's a strong enough villain for this phase of where we are in Marvel.
I completely agree. And like that's kind of like again, it's interesting to watch because overall, you watch it and you're like, okay, I see what you're doing, and I think it needs to be done, and I'm really happy that this movie exists for other people who may not be that far along on their journey. But at the exact same time, we're not really given a formidable villain. He's Sentry for like half of a minute and then he's taken down. And when he shows up and he's Bob, you're like, okay, this guy is very clearly up to something. Like I
Yep.
don't know what it is, but very clearly. And it just kind of it feels both rushed and incomplete. Um,
Yes.
just like the way that the story is handled. And then when he turns into the void, um, I just feel like a lot of that character's story felt less menacing once you
Yes.
realize, oh, no one's really gone forever.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, so like, and then also it was a little confusing because you're like, is this shame? Is this like the worst moments of people's lives? Like we don't get the shadow realm with
We
everyone.
don't get clear rules on what his power set is to understand. He's just kind of like this Superman-like figure until he starts sending people to the Shadow Realm, which I guess is more of the void than this. And this is like they're doing that Moon Knight shit again, where it's like, why are you confusing me, bro? Like, simplify this.
Like, you could, like, to your point, you could simplify this. There's a version of this movie where it's very clear. And then also to your point, I was like, is the void a different personality? Like, is this like a split personality thing? Which would make sense given what we've been told about
His
Bob.
mental health. Yeah.
And like his mental health, like it would make sense. And maybe like they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to make it like uh but it's not split personality anymore. It's some,
CID.
yeah, DID. Is that what we were going for? Is like my question. And if that's what we were going for, then you're right. We don't want to blame Bob, but we can see the void as an issue. And I felt like that's what we were trying to do, but it wasn't really clear. And it's just like a very unforgiving reading of this movie is sometimes I get the weepies. You
Yeah.
know, like
Exactly. And I feel like also it was kind of marketed incorrectly in the sense that the all the marketing would set you up to think you are about to watch a group of powerless people take on someone who has invincible power, which I felt like, wow, in our political age today, where all of us kind of feel powerless against like the bigger powers in the world, like what a great message. And so I was really like hoping to see an arc where we see them like, despite being human or like having limited powers, be able to, whether through wit or through teamwork or whatever, like, somehow defeat this villain that they deemed to be undefeatable. Like that's what I was really rooting for. And ultimately, because it just ends with like a group therapy session, a hug, I just like had a really hard time seeing them as the next Avengers, asterisks removed, like the new Avengers, like because I didn't feel like they had earned it because they didn't really do anything to really solve the issue. So that's how I felt about that.
Well, no, and I completely agree with you because, like, again, when I was watching it, I was like, another really big issue is if we're like this, let's say that this is a stand-in for like the male loneliness epidemic that we're having, and a lot of people are addressing with white men and like all this other stuff. To have Yelena be the one who's like, he just needs a hug. It's like, again, so what you're doing is you're saying that it is the woman's job to see the problem, to solve the problem, and to be kind of like his anchor. And it's like that's actually that's such an old-fashioned solution to a
Yes.
very modern problem, and we've already talked about that's not the case. So in all honesty, I'm not saying that this was wrong, but like have Sebastian Stan's character do it. Have John Walker do it. Like have men support other men, but the
Yeah.
fact that we have Yelena, the woman who herself is going through an identity crisis, who herself, like at the beginning of the movie, is being called to the void. So, in order for us to kind of like balance that out, she puts herself on the back burner and she saves this man, which again, hero's journey, I get it. But you also have to think of the optics of the idea of having a woman come and be the hero of a man when we are saying right now that it is no longer woman's work. It is men's work.
And it
Men to do the job.
and it cheapens Yelena's arc when her arc ends with her having to support a man. Like that's not the arc that we begin on at the beginning of this film. And like to the point I made earlier, you didn't have to make the Sentry and Void the one dealing with this. And maybe it's integral to that character's comic origin. I don't know. I'm not that deep into this, y'all. But by having Yelena like start the movie with, I basically just wake up, I work, and I go home and I do the same thing all over again. Like that's addressing it. That's addressing the problem right there. You don't need to have it mirrored in this other character in such a way that, well, if she solves his problem, she'll solve hers. Like it cheapens it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And also to that point is really funny because it reminds me like something I mentioned earlier. In the very beginning of the movie, we see her like quote unquote get called into the void. And it's supposed to be like a psych out of like, oh, you think she's jumping off the building, but it's actually for work. And it's like, yeah, no, that was obvious.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing of that about this movie is it's like if you wanted to like trick me into thinking something different might happen, then you needed to play this a little bit
Yeah.
differently. And it's not that it was a bad call, it's just that when you're like, oh, she's being called to the void. I was like, no, she's at work. Like, I know enough about this character to know that that person's jumping off the building, not because they feel like this is the end, but because this is the beginning of whatever assignment they're on. We're in medias race. I know enough about that. And I feel like there is a way of showing her like fall into it or be like, I don't know if I should, like there's a way of storytelling where you actually don't know which side Yelena's going to fall out on. Like even when she is when the void is like starting to come into the city and she's walking into the shadow, there's nothing about it that makes me feel like she won't get out of this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like as like even when she was walking towards the shadow realm, so to speak, I was like, oh, well, she's going to save him. Like, and I don't know how she's gonna get out, but I know that whatever happens right now, it's not permanent. And it's not just because she's the main character, it's because the way that we shot it, the directing in this is kind of like paint by numbers and like obvious
Yeah.
in a way that I'm like, okay, well, obviously, just based on the story that you've told me so far, we're getting out of this.
Also, if you're like another way to just approach the mental health thing was to really focus on the mental health of the core characters. Like, I feel like we learned so much about Yelena and we so much about Bob, but like afterthoughts are, John Walker and
Ava.
Ava. Yeah, yeah. Also, why is Taskmaster in all of the promotion of this movie only to die in 5 minutes? Don't even get me started. Like, that's the kind of shit where it's like they developed so much of the other characters and not complete enough to it doesn't make sense for them to have sacrificed development of all the other characters. I really kind of wanted this to be a little bit more superhero Breakfast Club. Like,
Here's the thing. There's a scene, the scene specifically when we're in the beginning and they're in the dungeon and they're about to get burned up and they're trying to work together and then like it's specifically the scene when they are in the tunnel and they have to like lean on each other.
yeah,
I got Breakfast Club vibes. I was like, oh, I get who we're dealing with. And to be fair, when Bucky shows up, I'm like, okay, now we have our Emilio Estevez right there. Like that's like I was like, okay, I get it. I get what we're doing. But after the story like is getting to go, I was like, oh, we're kind of losing that group of rejects, like Motley Crue energy.
yeah.
At
I
no
think
point, I think it deserved like expanding on characters like Ava. I think we get a little of John Walker's backstory and like why he is where he is, and
yeah.
I think the what we do get is good, but it's like we need more of that. Like to your point, even the Red Guardian, David Harbour's character, even him, it's like, okay, I have an idea, like based on your living arrangement. I understand where you're at. I know where you're at mentally, but also I feel like we could have explored a little bit more. I feel like everyone deserves their whole Shadow Realm moment. So we really understand just how much everyone is giving up.
And perhaps it's that thing where it's like, well, if you rewatch Falcon and Winter Soldier, you would understand John Walker's backstory. If you rewatch Black Widow, you would understand Red Guardian. It's like, no, this movie should be able to be self-contained, especially when these characters are introducing themselves to each other. There's so many opportunities to bring in backstory and bring in context to why the characters are the way they are.
Yeah, and to your point, it's funny because I didn't think about it, but with Yelena, she's constantly saying I lost my sister, but we don't get any context that she is Black Widow's sister. We don't get like one flashback. We don't get like anything.
They didn't want to pay Scarlett Johansson to use her image.
Yeah, but even her name, like, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like if you want this movie to stand alone on its own, you need to have a little bit more context of the world. We
Yep.
need to know these characters, and it's not like just rehashing things. I think the Yelena portion and the John Walker portion showed that you can give us new information that lets us know where these characters are now without having to give us an entire run through. Like
Yeah.
we just need to know what their current shame is, what their current moment is. That's more than enough.
And it's not even like we need, like, to your point, a lot of dialogue and extra scenes, because I feel like Spider-Verse was able to do this with way less dialogue for its characters, yet still make us feel empathy and understanding for all of them. Um, can I just quickly say some things about like the MCU real fast that like I couldn't really say earlier? The multiverse is so all over the place. Like I kind of went back and reviewed like phase 4 and 5 to see like where we are and where we just were and like how it's setting up this. It's all messy. There's a bunch of characters introduced that are never come back again, and also characters where I'm like, where are you right now while New York is going through this? Because literally, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Miss Marvel, like they're all in the area. So, like, where are they? Why aren't they involved in this? Like, where is this in the timeline of everything? Are the Eternals ever coming back again? If not, why did we have a movie about them? Like, that's the thing. And I know a lot of this can be explained as like, oh, they were setting up for Kang, and then they did a hard pivot towards Doctor Doom. But if that hard pivot seems to be leaving a lot of the phase 4 hero setups, like Shang-Chi and a few others, that it just feels like I'm not getting a completed storyline through all of this. And I think part of me was kind of hoping that they would have set some of these characters on alternate dimensions, and that's why they never mixed up or had anything, is because they were in their own worlds that are going to collide, whatever. It feels really sloppy. And I just think that like even the introduction of these characters as the new Avengers, to put it at the end of phase 5 versus at like the top of phase 4, top of phase 5, where we can have some breathing room, because all we have left in the multiverse is 4 official movies, 2 of them being Avengers. So how are you going to tell me that I'm going to get any conclusion to all of these cliffhangers, all of these clues that have been dropped, all these characters that have been set up? I'm not going to get that in 4 movies. Like, there's no way.
And to that point, I didn't need the Sam Captain America reference specifically because if you're telling me that we are, to your point, we are sharing this timeline with them, then why is no one talking about the Celestial? Like there are certain things where it's like I don't need you to reference these things if you're not going to do anything with that storyline. It seems like you mentioned it only to say, hey, there are two competing groups who want to use the name New Avengers.
And it's like, for what? Why is that what we're focusing on right now? And instead of like bringing clarification to what like Kate Bishop is doing right now, like where's Daredevil and all of this? Like, you're setting up all of these worlds where it's just like, even to just mention this character's name, just so we understand that they're in the world, like it's just something to show us that other things are going on. Maybe there's an incident happening on the West Coast right now that's happening, and that's why Ant-Man hasn't been seen since Quantumania. Like, I just want some kind of interconnection for a universe that they specifically created for expanded interconnection.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like that's kind of like what makes this hard. We talked a lot about the negative. I do want to say that there was some fun in this. I think that the whole Yelena and Ava teaming up against John Walker thing is really fun. I
Yeah.
think Bob is used really like in the perfect way when he's just Bob. Something's off, but also they use his character like in a really fun way. And I had already praised, but like Yelena's heart in this, and even like her thing with her dad,
Yeah.
like it's touching. And then the scene where Alexei, David Harbour's character, goes and he saves the little girl,
So
and
great.
and then the void that makes that little girl disappeared. I was like, oh shit!
Like,
like
that
it
was
like,
badass for like a hot second.
no,
It's
yeah.
crazy.
But again, here's the thing: once Yelena gets gone, then you're like, oh, everyone's coming back.
Yeah.
But at the exact same time, you're like, how badass would it be if Marvel just let them be like, child gone forever?
Yeah.
You're like, yo,
It would have just made the Sentry so much more of a threat. But it just feels like every time they set up a large threat, they have to also at the same time pull it back, i.e., Kang. Um, I will say, yeah, like to your point, there are some great things about this. I love Florence Pugh's performance in this. I kind of, I mean, this isn't really a critique. I just wish Bucky had been a part of the initial group's escape from the home. I felt like he didn't get a chance to bond enough with that team in the way I would have wanted him to. Considering that I kind of see him and Yelena as the leaders of this new Avengers, yet they had no like connection or character development between them as a duo throughout this movie.
Correct. I agree with you. And I just think that considering where everyone was coming from, specifically our core five,
Yeah.
I thought that was like a really good usage of it. The going back to something you had mentioned earlier, the taskmaster of it all. I said I think that it was very much a clearing of the board with that because from my understanding, I never read the comic books, but the movie version of the Taskmaster and the comic book version are very different. And I feel like they were like, if the whole point of the Taskmaster is whatever they see or encounter superpower, they can kind of mimic. And so if you have someone like that on a team with the Century, they are going to be able to meet the Century, But like if you clear the board where then you're like, that person's off, we don't really know. It's like it's kind of like unceremonious the way that they ended her character, but at the exact same time, you were like, I understand why you couldn't have this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Post credit. Let's talk post credit.
Yeah, the post-credit scene, they kind of are set up as the new Avengers. They find out that Captain America is arguing for the namesake of Avengers. Yelena senses something on the satellite. We look, and it is the spaceship from Fantastic Four, leading to, I'm guessing, the Fantastic Four crossing into this universe from whatever universe they're in, and we're going to find out that story in the next movie.
I agree. So you know what? Here's the thing I would say. To me, while I loved it and I was like, okay, cool, I know what we're doing. I feel like I don't know about your theater, but my theater showed the Fantastic Four preview right
Yes.
before it. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's wrong. I feel like you showed that preview after the movie.
Yeah.
I feel like specifically you give that moment of, oh, it's the Fantastic Four. Then you show that trailer. Like to me, that is the order, especially for a movie going experience, that I want to get the surprise, then a little bit more. Because of course, right after I get that surprise, I'm going to want more. I want you to tell me everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like by you giving me what that world looks like and what that trailer looks like beforehand, then me seeing the spaceship at the end just makes sense.
Also, two things about the Fantastic Four. One, I feel like I already know how that movie begins and ends without having seen it, and that automatically takes something away from that experience, Marvel. So I know you're just trying to set up the larger world. You could have done without it, honestly. I just also feel like the second thing is that Marvel is constantly like, oh, guess who's coming next? But I'm just like, you know what? You did that with Kang for me. Like, you did that with so many other characters where it's like, oh, guess who's coming back into this universe? And it just didn't really amount to anything. So it's like, no, you're not going to hype me on like a ship. Like, show me why I should even give a shit about these characters before I'm excited to see them. Because I don't know what Marvel thinks the worldwide community's relationship is to Fantastic Four, but we've just had some pretty mid movies about the Fantastic Four since the 2000s and almost nothing before that. So I just feel like they think that these characters are as synonymous as like, Spider-Man or the Hulk when it's not on that level at all. Like we know their basic power sets, but we've only seen them in versions where as a team, they don't work very well. So we're not excited for this.
It's really funny to me because what someone has said previously, and I completely agree with, is that Disney actually has done the best Fantastic Four movie, and it's The Incredibles. Like, yep. That's like the best Fantastic Four movie we've ever gotten in our lifetime, and that's the bar. It's like your bar is just beating that. It's not the other Fantastic Four movies. You have to beat our love for The Incredibles. And if you can't meet and match that kind of energy and perfection and attention to detail, then honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
Anyway, like, are you excited about this next phase?
If let me just say this. Like, there are it's Avengers, Doomsday, Avengers, like whatever the last one's going to be. We have a Spider-Man movie and a Fantastic Four movie. Those four, I mean, like, those are going to be, I imagine, pretty important movies. I imagine we're going to get a lot of story in it. But to have started the multiverse saga, phase four, where there was like seven movies and like seven TV shows and all of this stuff to just focus on four. And I know like everyone's like, hey, quality over quantity. That's where Marvel messed up. Okay, I get that. It just feels unbalanced. It feels like we're about to get a lot of rushed storyline leading up to this finale of the multiverse in a way where it's like, I'm excited, but I also feel like I'm going to get half told stories like I did with this movie.
We talked a lot about the story, but I do want to give them credit for the fact that this movie uses practical sets. This movie
Yeah.
kind of like it removed the green screen in a lot of things. You could tell a lot of things were practical effects, really small sets. It focused on the human interactions, and I just want to give Marvel credit because like while you and I both agree that this was just it was like an okay movie, and it was kind of like the better version of what you've given us this phase, but
Yep.
it was by far not the best you've ever given us. But it's a step in the right direction. It
Yeah.
is a step towards giving us things that feel consequential to the characters themselves, to that feels tangible. Like I watched this and I was like, oh, I'm on a set. But I
Yeah.
don't care because I'm watching a comic book movie. And that's what I'm saying is like I don't need to see the blade of grass in the background of a CGI screen. What I need is to feel like these characters are in the same room with each other.
Yeah. Or just to care about them. Like I had just rewatched Black Panther after I saw Sinners. And it's like, yes, MCU is taking steps in the right direction. There, like you could tell there's been an effort since Deadpool to course correct what's going on. However, the one thing they're still doing is putting too many hands in the kitchen. Ryan Coogler, as a singular artist director, was able to give perhaps the best standalone movie of the MCU. And I feel like they're like after Eternals failed, they were like, no, we're not going to let one director have a vision anymore. Where it's like, actually, that movie looks beautiful. It's not the movie that, like the direction that's the problem. But yeah, it just feels like there's still like I can hear the board meetings in the background
Yeah.
as story decisions are being made
Yeah.
versus it feeling like I'm really shocked or surprised or emotionally pulled in a unique way, the way I was with some of the more like I don't know, the little engine that could movies like Guardians of the Galaxy, like the movies that they just like do your own thing. We don't care too much about this. Like you when that happens, magic happens. So I mean, Fantastic Four looks from the trailer visually very different, very unique. I hope it brings me closer to what I'm talking about. But as of just judging this movie, I don't know that I'm gonna get all of that in the next phase.
I agree. Like I had asked you earlier, were you still in on the Marvels movies? And I think for me right now, I'm like I will continue to watch you, but I don't have any hopes for you anymore. Like
Yeah,
I see you kind of like I do Jurassic Park
yeah.
or Fast and the Furious, where it's like, oh, I'll go check you out, but like I don't think that you're going to give me cinema. I don't think
Yep.
that you're going to be like the new Mission Impossible movie. That's a franchise movie where I'm like, oh, I will be seated.
I am so excited. That's the thing too, where it's like even for like these Marvel movies that are usually the movies you're most looking forward to throughout the year, it's like I am way more excited for Final Destination and Mission Impossible than I am for either of these Marvel movies. So
And that's because those movies have really studied what they are bringing to the table, and you feel like when you go to them, even if you were getting something painted by numbers, you're like, this is the best picture book I've ever seen. Like
and
that's
to like the like almost like when you think about what's happening with Minecraft, where it's like, yeah, chicken fight, whatever, it got a little extreme, but also was like a communal experience in the theater, like similar to Rocky Horror Picture.
yep.
It's like I want to have an experience in the theater. And when I look at the Final Destination trailer, I'm like, that's gonna be a fun experience in the theater. When I look at the trailer for a Marvel movie, it's all starting to feel like homework. And so it's like until you can like get me as excited for an original experience, I would even say Superman is doing that more for me than Fantastic Four is right now. So I don't know. Maybe I have a little bit of bitterness towards Marvel, but I just feel like I've just stuck around for so
I don't feel
long
like that's your
through the
fault.
mud.
I feel like
You know,
I think my point is that is up to the studios to overcome.
yeah,
It's up for the Marvel property to overcome. If people are getting tired and stale, like I don't think there's any excuses when the fact that horror reinvents itself consistently. People
absolutely.
like Meg 2, I've never seen that movie, but I know that people are hyped about it. Why? Because it knows what it is and it knows the audience that it's trying to go to, and it's doing that to perfection.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the thing. It just feels like Marvel has lost its idea of making individual great movies and instead is only focused on telling a epic story. And it's like, yeah, but like if we don't care about the individual stories, then the large epic doesn't really matter.
And that's kind of where I am with the multiverse. It's like there's so many like loose ends, there's so many things going on. Like Wanda Vision and Agatha
Oh,
feels like a completely different universe than what's going on with Shang-Chi, which feels like a completely different universe than what's going on with Daredevil. And evidently they all take place in the same universe. So it's like, even though they marketed this as a multiverse, we're mainly focusing on one universe in a way where everything still feels disconnected.
Yep. Yep. So I completely agree. I wanted to have the conversation about like where we saw Marvel and
Yeah.
all of this. You and I love movies, and again, I don't know about you, but like I'll go see whatever comes next. I don't have hopes anymore. I go and I see this movie like I would anything else. And to your point, I've had more fun at the theater several different times with way different movies that were all original storylines that had familiar faces and familiar directors, but they were still trying to give me something fun and different. And this just felt like the best of what you could make out of your scraps.
And I
What honestly, that's notable.
And one thing I'm noting from just having original experiences watching original movies is that whenever you have movies based off of IP, based off of comics, it's like to some extent the ending's already been written. Like the
Yeah.
spoilers are already out there. They may do their own little twist on of what's been done in the comic, but like I ultimately know how Secret Wars is going to play out from like a broad perspective. So it's like, what else do you got for me? Because, the comics are there. So that's why I feel like it's really hard for these IPs to keep competing, where it's just like, I mean, even Disney, I'm just like, I know Snow White. I know how that story goes. Like, we don't, what else do you have for me? And I just feel like these larger studios are bankrolling on IP to the point where it's going to IP it to death. And we're not going to have any of these characters left after people just grow wary of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, ultimately, you guys let us know what you think about the film. These were our thoughts. We love and appreciate you guys for listening to us. Make sure that you tell us how you felt about Thunderbolts after you've seen it. And also, if you haven't yet, go see Sinners.
Hey.
And also, I mentioned it before. Go see Drop. I think it's really good. I think everyone should go.
Sinners is coming back into IMAX on March 15th for 2 weeks, and AMC has been down. Like people, it's already mostly sold
It's
out.
already sold out. It's already sold out.
For a movie that's already in theaters and has been in theaters for weeks to be able to do that is insane. Like that's old school movie.
This reminds me of Titanic.
Yeah. Word of mouth just like grew it every single week. Yeah. It's been a long time since we had a movie like that.
Absolutely. I think Black Panther or Get Out.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, black movies.
Hey.
You know what? Also, I'll give Mission Impossible too. That was one. No, Top Gun. Top Gun was one where Top Gun Maverick was one where I remember everyone being like, "Yo, it's way better than it has any right being."
Yeah, totally. And by the way, the new Brad Pitt movie just looks like the NASCAR version of that. Like copy and paste. I'm bored already, bro.
Absolutely. All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening. Check us out on all the places. Tony, you want to close us out?
Later, bruh.
Later, bros.